it's just a conversation. Like, it's a very candid conversation. It's a very honest conversation. It's informal. Feel free to air any views, disagree, respectfully, whatever. But the idea for today is, again, to get the community together and to talk about a conversation topic that's been sort of blowing up on TOC, which is profile building. And before we get to profile building, I'll just quickly take a minute to set the context for TOC, because I think it's important to reiterate what we do and why we are here. The very plain and simple objective of the Outreach Collective is to bring professionals from this community, whether you're a university rep, whether you're from a school, whether you're an independent counselor or a service provider. We want to bring this community together without silos. And we realize that often businesses are unable to do that because they have competition challenges and of collaboration. But as a not-for-profit, as a professional body, it's this is our bottom line, that we want to bring people together without any business interests or any sort of bias or partiality. As long as people are ethical in their dealings, we want to make sure that people are coming together and working together and collaborating and sort of breaking a little bit of new ground in the space of outreach, because there's a lot of, I think, innovation, but it's still at a very nascent stage, and there's much to be done for us as professionals together. On that note, also happy to say that in the last 4 months, we've managed to conduct several professional development and learning sessions where many of you have been a part of it. We've done two Legends of Outreach sessions with Professor Rajkumar, the founding vice chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. We've had Vineet Gupta, founder and trustee of Plaksha and Ashoka, sharing their outreach journeys with us. We've had a masterclass on international markets from Ankur. We've had a conversation about the importance of SATs and other tests in college admissions. Recently, we had a conversation about what can universities do differently with respect to outreach from a school perspective, where we had Pragati and Ashima and Sri Vidya and Charles and so many others sharing their views, which was very useful. Excited to tell you that we have two other masterclasses coming up, one by the College Board on AP and its impact and new developments on AP courses. And we have another workshop by IB specifically for university reps on how do you leverage IB as a curriculum with the context of college admissions, college education, and a lot of frequently asked questions which we generally get asked, and sometimes I often see, not sometimes, I often see people winging their answers. So it's a good idea to get hear it from the horse's mouth. Now, jumping straight into this conversation, I'm very happy to welcome Bulbul from Atlas Skill Tech, Sarvesh from Intern Shala, Namita from the Red Pen, Prateek from Mindler, and Madhu from Clever Harvey. And Ankur, thank you for joining us from Nairobi, and all the TOC members. This conversation is really about profile building. And I think there's been a lot of debate about what does profile building actually mean. What is the use of it? Is it simply a tactic for universities or companies to, create an alternative revenue channel by creating FOMO? And there's so much more to this conversation. So I'd like to welcome all of you. And, Bulbul, if we can go straight to you for your opening comments on what, according to you, is profile building? What does Atlas Skill Tech view profile building as? And it's a loaded question. What do you offer at Atlas to help students with profile and skill building?
Well, Bhakti, thanks for having me here first of all. And a little earlier in the day, I remember I spoke to you and I said, I don't think I'm the right person to discuss this because much like outreach, for the longest time, when many of us did outreach without knowing it was called so, right? And then you told me, well, everything adds up into what is profile building. With your permission, I think and I thought through our discussion later, Bhakti, and I'm going to start with actually quoting someone with your permission. And this is someone I I read very fondly someone called Deepak Chopra, right? And I'm sure many of us know of him. And I think to me, everything that we do, whether it is a single day in class or whether it is work we do at Atlas or whether you and I do in our personal capacity, is really this, okay? And hear this. So he says, it's actually a foreword to a book written on um, discover your dharma, okay? Or find yourself, or find your purpose. And it says the universe is like a jigsaw puzzle. You are a piece of this puzzle, and there are no spare parts. Each of us was born with talents that play a role in serving this cosmic web of the universe, bringing about global equilibrium. And I thought this was so beautiful because each of us must find that one slot, that was meant for us. And that's probably the purpose. And I think the more I think about it, Bhakti, profile building or the things that we do or the way we interact with students and the value we bring to their lives is one step or 1 inch or one step to helping them find themselves, know themselves, or as the Bible would say, know thyself. And really, for me, I think that is what profile building or these interactions is about. But to answer your question on a lesser philosophical and a more practical basis, at Atlas, we do three things, Bhakti. The first and foremost, the outreach work itself that we do, right, is a step in creating value for a student in any of those interactions. Of course, there is, since we come from Atlas, since we are a skill tech university, we are talking about skills that the university offers, whether it is in the space of design or business or artificial intelligence and machine learning. But the larger objective is to help the students find themselves in those interactions, whether they were to join Atlas or whether they were to join any of the other universities. So finding themselves through the work we do, and we do extensive amount of work so far as our outreach is concerned, and you've been telling us so that in the various interactions across the country. The other thing we do is a summer school that we run here at Atlas, and this is our 10th consecutive year. We have 3 batches, and if you ask me what is the purpose of the summer school, quite clearly help students build skills that will last a lifetime, right? Whether it is working with hand skills, whether it is understanding certain dimensions of soft and hard skills. The other is build a community, right? Never before have like-minded students come together to build something together. And the third, I would think, is also university readiness, whether it is getting yourself enough content that you can write about in your statement of purpose, whether it is to help you build a portfolio that will get you access into a university, whether it is to certify you through Parsons into giving you something of value for eventual university readiness. So I think the summer school does all of that. And finally, we also run internship programs for high school students. Currently, of course, majority of the students who've been coming for these internship programs in summers have been schools from Bombay. But I do hope over time we should be able to scale this for students across the country as well. So 3-point answer to your question, other than, of course, a larger purpose. And I think that everything that we do, everything that each of us does every moment is to help ourselves and through us and in working with students achieve that purpose that they're meant for, find that slot in the cosmic web. But here at Atlas, the 3 things that we're doing is 3 specific things that we do is outreach, summer schools, and internship programs.
It's very interesting that you integrated outreach as a part of pre-college experiences and not a marketing activity. And I'll hold that thought and I'll come back to it because I think maybe we can end on that thought, this conversation, because this is the Outreach Collective. So thank you for that, Bulbul. Sarvesh, the OG internshala of internships, right? I mean, it's very interesting that you've started a while back, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think you embarked on this journey a while back, and I'd love to hear from you. I mean, when it was not cool to do college, or when it was not cool to build profiles, you were a little bit ahead of the curve. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what made you see that? What was your foresight? And then how is that? What does Internshala do? And again, a disclaimer to everyone here: none of these TOC is not paid by anyone, and we are not receiving a penny for this conversation. We don't receive a penny for any conversation. For us, it's important to bring different opportunities to the fore. We really want to know what you guys do, because there are counselors here, there are independent counselors here, and it might surprise you to know that most of them, many of them, are not aware that there are even opportunities like this in India. So, Sarvesh, would love to hear from you.
Sure. I think Bulbul hit the nail on the head when she said the purpose of anything that we do is to find ourselves and our place in the world. And I think internships, or what internship does, is very close to that itself. The reason I started internship back in 2011 was because two things. One is this whole problem of employability of Indian youth, that every corporate says that the graduates that are coming out of our colleges are not employable. They lack the soft skills and the technical skills that are needed in today's market. And the other part, and the other side of the coin I see, is that a lot of graduates take up their first job without even realizing whether they're meant for it or not. And they really quit it very soon because it is not where their heart lies. So I thought that internships is a great way to solve both the problems, right? And when I say internships, I mean real internships where you actually go and work with a company on a real project and you actually get paid for it some amount, right? And I thought an internship was a great way for you to really discover where does your heart lie and what skills are needed in that area and build those out. And that internship could be for different purposes. It could be you want to build your profile because you want to apply for masters later, or you want to apply for a higher education, say bachelor's later, or it could be because you want to get a job in that domain later, right? So internship is a very multi-purpose tool in that way. It allows you to discover what you really want to do and what field you want to get into. And when I started internship in 2011, it was primarily targeting college students. I didn't really think that high school students would ever want to do internship. I never expected that. But to our surprise, over the years, the number of school students who come on the platform and do internship and actually get selected for internships has been on the rise. Last year alone, we had 20,000 students, college school students, who were searching for and applying for internships on Internshala, and many of them do get selected. And if I have the permission to share my screen, I just want to share three very different stories of why they did internships and how it helped them eventually connect with their goals. So do I have the share permission? Can I
Yeah, I
share
think you
something?
do. I think you do. You can just click on share on the top right.
All right. Oh, so let me say include system audio, media. Is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So this is an example of student Aniket Kakade, ninth grader. He came and did an online training on Internshala, and he then later on used that training to got himself an internship when he was in ninth standard. And it's not and he doesn't come from a like say metro. He came from a I think tier two place in Maharashtra somewhere. And when we spoke to him about why did like eighth standard, I don't remember what I was doing in eighth standard when and he not only is first thinking about his career, he's also exploring multiple options. So for him, that is just that earlier I start, more options I can explore, and then whatever career choices I make, be it for my higher education or for career, I would make more informed choice. So this is back in 2018, and somebody in eighth standard, as early as eighth standard, has come on Internshala and got himself an internship, a technical internship at that, not a soft skill internship. That's one example.
Okay, so
The
I'm going to make sure that I come back to that example, because I have serious questions about a graded student going for a corporate internship. So I will throw that at you. So
Oh,
we can
then I think the
we can talk
next two
about it
exam,
later. Yeah,
next two
we can
examples
talk.
are going to be even more surprising for you. This is a
Oh
complaint.
wow. Okay.
This
All
is
right.
a complaint email from a student. He says, I'm not being allowed to apply for jobs on Internshala. So Internshala does internships as well as fresher jobs. And for fresher jobs, we say you need to be a university student or should have completed your university to apply for fresher jobs. And this person says, I'm a 16-year-old and pursuing my high school along with learning from Harvard X courses. And this person has been bagging internship one after another, and he's built his portfolio. And because he's really excited about computer science domain and he wants to build his skill set, etc. But now he wants to apply for a job. We are not allowing him to do that, and the screenshot is not attached here because the system detects that he's in school and a school student can't apply for a full-time job on Internshala. So I can't imagine, like, when somebody 16-year-old in a high school learning online and then using that knowledge simultaneously to get internships, which he has gotten many, and now he's thinking about getting a job when he's 16, right? And this is very recent. This is, I think, a month back. So again, I think the students, as I said, use internships in different way. And third example is the last example that I'm going to show is close to my heart. This is story of Mayank, and this is a long email, so I will not read through it a lot. But he landed at Cornell. The backstory to that is he dropped out of his bachelor's program in Mumbai because he had given up on that bachelor's program, and he had lost hopes that he would ever be able to do something in life. Then his elder sister advised him to find his sort of slot in the world. What Bulbul said, I think, beautiful phrase, the place in the world through internships. And for 2 years, after dropping out of bachelor's, he did multiple internships. He did an internship at Byju's, at Unilever, at Disney Star through Internshala as a college dropout, as a bachelor's dropout, and used that experience to build his profile, and then applied for a bachelor's program again at Cornell and landed there. So I think, and I think all of these are very, very powerful examples for me as to why students do internship. I think they just, today's school students or college students are far more exposed to the world, and they want to start young. There's no define, or you only, there's a certain path that all of us sort of went through. You do your school and board, and then you go to college, and then graduate with a job, and then you start job. I think, but nobody wants to wait till 21 to earn their first paycheck anymore. So I think that's essentially is what I think is happening, where students just want to do internships for various purposes. But primarily, I think, to figure out if this is the right career for me. This is even if I go for a bachelor's in this field, is this a field I really want to spend 3 years, 4 years of my life in, right? As you know, how I would say that in India we do engineering first, and then we decide what we want to do with our lives, right? Or figure out what we want to do with lives. But I think a lot of students are saying that maybe I shouldn't waste 4 years to figure out what I want to do with my life, and there's a faster and smarter way to figure that out. So I think that's what the shift that we are seeing on Internshala.
Thanks, Sarvesh, for sharing those insights. It's I think a topic for another conversation on. Actually, it's one of the questions that we have: when is the right age to start? And we will come to that. But I want to move on to, and Namit, I'm going to come to you last because I want the counselor perspective from you. But I want to hear from first Prateek, and then we'll go on to Madhu from Clever Harvey. Prateek, you guys have pioneered a very interesting concept of virtual internships, right? And I have gone through those internships. I've seen those internships. Full disclosure, when I was working at Univariety, I've even marketed those internships because Univariety marketed them. And through the course of doing that, I realized that there was some merit. There was significant merit to a virtual option. But then there's also the other side, which is does a virtual internship count as an internship or does it count as a course? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on Mindler. You guys are in the space of career guidance and guiding students, and you work with some of the best schools in the country. There's forget profile building, there's a dearth of great teachers in our schools, and then we are talking to them about profile building, which is like another level. So how does this all fit in with the kind of schools that you work with, the heritage schools you work with, and where are you sort of aligning your virtual internship vision with your career guidance vision?
Great. Thank you so much, Bhakti, for that question. So let me just start from the point that what does profile building mean for us at Mindler, right? It's a slightly different lens wherein what we believe is profile building is an outcome of everything a student does during the educational journey. And it's not what we are setting out for. Let's say if we are going to a school, we are not saying that, hey, we will help all your students do profile building. The objective is we will help you in career discovery. Once you determine what you want to do, to succeed in that, you will need to do XYZ things. What things you do in that journey for me is profile building. It is not necessary that everybody has to participate in MUNs. It is not necessary everybody has to do a research paper. Not everybody needs to do a internship / virtual internship / corporate experience. Doesn't matter. For me, how I look at it, and when we are building products particularly, so when we were doing this, Bhakti, the idea was how can we help students discover in-depth career opportunities, what can they do deeper, and how do we do it at scale. So scale was a very, very important element in doing that. Now, the moment you're thinking on those lines, The idea is that you're looking at the masses, right? Let's say an example which survey showed about a kid, the second email wherein you got backlash from a kid not being able to, these are outliers, right? They will be there, they are there, and I think that outlier number is increasing given my experience with some of the top schools, but still those guys will figure it out, right? They will need support. But when I'm talking about the masses, I'm talking about a kid who is still confused into the mainstream careers or the contemporary one, and how do I deep dive into it? So for them to get that experience to multiple activities is what profile building is there for us. Now coming to virtual internships, so this was a very interesting thing. So we are doing two three different things. One, on profile building, we are helping students to use a kind of a simulator or an evaluator tool, help them understand where they stand today amongst various things that you can do. So that is one very simple activity wherein is your profile strong or not. Two, for the career domains you're looking at, what is necessary? Let's say if my dream is to go to an IIT, my plan in 9, 10, 11, 12 would be very different from a student wanting to study at Kriya or Flame or Ashoka or US for that matter. The journey, how as a counselor you would define it, would be slightly different. Third very important thing is getting experience, and that's where the entire concept of virtual career internships come in. Now, very interesting questions, that should it be internships, should it be a course? It really doesn't matter. If you ask me personally, if I was a parent, it doesn't, I don't care. You may call it whatever anybody wants. For me, what it is, in about 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 1 month with a Puma kind of a program, I am picking up a domain which I want to know about. Let's say ethical hacking. I have a virtual mentor who is telling me in around 4 or 5 hours what this career is. I'm doing practical activities. I'm doing simulative activities. I am doing role plays. I'm doing so much stuff. I'm getting an evaluative report. I'm getting a certificate. That is that experience which is important for me. And by the time I complete that, I know almost everything I need to know about that career at my age and my level, and enough information to take a call whether this career is something which I want to do or not. That is what we want to achieve. Whether it is called an internship, somebody may call it whatever. It's how you use it. It's like almost like how we use stuff that we do in life on LinkedIn, or how it's more about presentation of all that stuff on a resume. So really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean the word internship just has like this mass appeal because it's the
True.
buzzword of
Bec-
the
and
time
If
right
I
now.
it's purely SEO, nothing else. An honest business answer. It's like SEO is the
I
reason.
appreciate
That
the
is what people
candor.
search, and that is why I use it.
and
And
I
but having said that, when we have worked on this and we have got to what we have got to understand is there's a huge block in the mind of actually some of the other stakeholders. A
Hmm.
student or a Mindler or any other organization, is their objective is to help them. What we have started moving towards is we have started calling virtual internships more of virtual career simulations. We have rebranded it because we want to stay away from the stakeholders misconstruing it for the lack of any other reason, and just be very clear, boss. The idea
Yeah.
is to help you deep dive into this. And it is actually, if you ask me, in my experience, and I've had kids who have done this Puma program with us, and we can talk in detail about that, or internship in 5 careers. And if you ask them, they will say, boss, this is brilliant, because in another role, his father was the editor of a newspaper. He got a content writing role. All he was doing is going out there to that office. He was physically going there, but just sitting there and doing nothing. Like, there is no meaningful work. Nobody is engaging with him. That's what happens in an internship. And it's not just school, right? You go to, after my MBA, if I did an internship, my internship at an organization like Tata AIG in Bombay, 70% time you were just free and doing nothing, right? That's the harsh reality. Now, what we are trying to say is, let's not
Sarvesh is
focus on that.
dying to chip in here. Sarvesh is
I
dying.
wish
No,
I
I'm
wish
sure. I'm
I
sure
wish
you
But
would.
yeah, you go for it and
And
then Sarvesh can jump in, then we're going
at
to
a
Madhu.
student's level, 9, 10th, 11th, 12th, wherein they're, for them, the biggest asset that they have and the biggest thing that they have to optimally use is time. I have school, I have my
Hmm.
exams, I have 100 other pressures. I have to optimally use it to do what I can. So thus, never thought of doing it in person. Always the concept of virtual was there. At least that's how I thought about it.
Hmm.
It will obviously be good for a lot of kids who want to gain on ground experience, and we facilitate that, right? There are kids who want to do that. We facilitate that. We help them open up opportunities. We have partnered with some organizations who have done, and in fact, Sarvesh and I also had a chat on this about 2, 3 months back after we launched our corporate internship program, and we had a detailed discussion, and he was talking about where are these 30,000 kids coming from and what is happening. So we were doing a detailed talk. But yeah, merit in both sides, but that is the lens that we are looking at it from. So that's the objective is to help a kid get detailed career clarity, and everything is designed for us around that.
yeah.
Noted. I think what also, so Sarvesh, yes, you will get your few minutes. Just very quickly, I think it also helps when there is a low risk in terms of time commitment, and access, there is a higher opportunity to explore. And I think more than anything, it's not just about doing internships. And I'm not just talking about virtual internships. I think it's a great way to understand. The students are often sort of focused on things that they love doing, so they'll choose those options. But I think it's always great to encourage them to also go in for experiences that they think they're afraid of or they're not very fond of. It could be math related, it could be STEM related, and say, hey, just explore it. You've got nothing to lose. Nobody's judging you here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Bhakti, yes, of
Okay,
course.
sorry, I froze for a second. All right. So yeah, that was my 2 bits. Yeah, Sarvesh, go in, and then Madhu, we come straight to you. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Sarvesh.
so I think the problem that Pratik spoke about is the problem why International was born to solve the problem of meaningless internships. And Pratik, I wish International was there when you were looking for internship after your MBA, so that you didn't have to spend 70% of your time doing nothing. So our tagline when we started was internship that matter, where these are meaningful experiences, which is why we insist on with stipend internship, because there's a skin in the game for everybody, right? Students get paid. So what we say virtual internship on International are actual real internship with corporates and organizations, but they are done remotely. So like remote work, and they have 2 hours a day, 1 hour a day kind of commitment. Most of the school students actually do those kind of internships when they do content writing, design, etc. And I think the way they are different from corporate simulation experiences is it's not simulation, it's all real life. So you make a mistake, it goes live on the product, and you get to learn from it in real time. And the collaboration element, the working with team, etc., is all real, right? The feedback that you get is all real because it's eventually going in the real world. And I think another key difference that I see in virtual internship, the way we call them virtual internship, is the fact that you get paid for it. And for a lot of students, the getting paid for their skills and their talent is the first external validation of their selves. That somebody, oh, I have something in me that somebody's willing to pay me for. And I think that does wonders. All of us remember our first paychecks, right? It does wonders to their morale. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add to the conversation.
Thanks, Sarvesh. And Namita, the question I'm going to shoot at you after Madhu is, we have folks here who are offering industry-led experiences, and we have universities offering university-led experiences, and there's a gap. So between schools and industry, there is the university, right? So what should come first, and is there a chronology to it, and is there a milestone association to it in terms of age appropriateness? So I'm going to come to you with that question. Madhu, would love to hear junior MBA, Clever Harvey. You guys have been doing this for years. I know at least the last 7 8 years. I know that you've been around, maybe more, I might be mistaken, but what has been Clever Harvey's sort of vision, and where do you see a junior MBA? And why junior MBA? And what is that? How does that add value? You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to address your vision question first. You're right, as an organization, Calido Learning, we've been here for 7 years. The Clever Harvey programs were our first retail programs, and those came into life in April 2020. Why did we do this, right? So when I think of the admissions process in our country, by default, about 90% of kids are told you're not going to get anywhere because it all runs on a cutoff. So it's like, there's one door that's IIT, there's another door that's NEET, and then there's like another door with like accountancy and one other door with lawyers. And every parent is telling their kid, do something in one of these doors. And the queue is really long, like really, really, really long. And no one's ever going to really make it if they're getting anything less than the 92, 93% in the boards. But to us, the question's always been, if you've got a child who's doing 70% or 75% in their marks, but is running a business on the side, or is involved with an NGO on the side, or is building this robot, or actively seeking out these opportunities, the kind of students that Sarvesh is talking about, is he not better prepared for university? Is he not someone who deserves the same shot at getting a good education? Or why do we have a system which is like a traffic jam to success rather than having a highway to success, where we can recognize that kids are not 2D. Kids have multiple dimensions. And that is the vision with which Clever Harvey was born, saying that students they have very limited opportunities to do things outside of the classroom. Now, the kind of kids who are going to Servatius platform are, I mean, they're fantastic. They're the top of the lot who are taking really, really high initiative to be able to do things on their own. But the majority of students are looking to be able to do something in the real world, but they need more structure. They need a lot more guidance. They need a lot more hand holding to be able to get there. And our goal was to say, if we can change kids from being 2D into becoming like 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, 6-dimensional, then as individuals, they have, that confidence Sarvesh talked about. Like the first time you build a project that has impact in the real world, huge boost in confidence. Not just the kids, the parents. I've had parents who come to us and say, I didn't know my kid could do something. Because if your child is not topping the class, every PTA you're being told, hey, this kid's kind of good for nothing. But the first time you see him pitch a business plan, or you see him build an ad campaign for Domino's, you see him, do something in the real world, the parent has renewed confidence that my child has potential in life. Second, it's showing them other avenues to success. So Prateek talked about this whole IIT obsession, but why do you have to be an engineer first? You could be looking at data science, you could be looking at so many other fields adjacent to engineering, where the queue is not as long and it's just as good a career. Um, You'll be amazed. So many of the students who sign up with us are creative, because most parents are worried that if my child is creative, he's going to end up as like an artist with, very little stability or livelihood going forward. And they're amazed when we tell them they could be UX designers, they could be chief marketing officers, and these are all very respectable, stable, lucrative careers. And the third, and this is a happy byproduct for us, is university admissions. So, we've now partnered with about 36 top universities, Plaksha, Kreya, OP Jindal, Bennett, DY Patil, etc., where you can apply directly from the Clever Harvey platform with your portfolio of projects, and they give you weightage in the admissions process. So all the way from giving you weightage to giving you scholarships. And it's a huge win for me, because that's universities recognizing that kids are not just two-dimensional. And not just Indian universities, overseas universities. So like just last week, we had a student who's dyslexic, comes from a sort of a very local school in the outskirts of Hyderabad. And he got admission into New York University with a 1.5 CR scholarship. I mean, he's ecstatic, because his parents didn't think with his learning disabilities he could access something like that. And we never enrolled him saying, let's do profile building. We just said, come along, try a bunch of stuff, see what you like. And along the way, the projects that he's built gave him that rich material to talk about his experiences when he did his statement of purpose. And then
Yeah,
getting that sort of outcome is just a happy byproduct,
sure.
because I don't believe in profile building. It's really discovering yourself, doing what you're passionate about, and then we've got the right forward integrations into university to say the outcomes will follow. You become that kid that the college wants, as opposed to
Absolutely.
being the kid that's knocking on their door to get noticed from like 10,000 other applicants.
Thanks, Madhu. And I mean, I have a fundamental challenge with the term profile building, because I think when you say profile building, then you're like focused on that piece of paper or that digital document that's spelling out your achievements. And so the pursuit is to make that look good and not really sort of learning or skill
It's fake,
development.
right?
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
it's fake. It'll get you into college, then what?
it has its own place. I won't say that it's not important, but at the same time, that's not the be all and end all. And therefore, I think we need to also, I think semantics are very critical. And when we keep saying profile building, I think it kind of
Mm.
harps upon that concept of work for the resume and not for the learning and the skills. So maybe we need to also change the semantics a little bit. I think also the whole semantics of summer program, right? Like, what does that even mean? Because it happens in a summer and it's a program. And what does that mean? Like, can we kind of reimagine that a little bit and sort of reintroduce that? And that's Bulbul. I'll come to you straight after Namita to talk a little bit more about that. But Namita, you were honestly, the Red Pen has organized probably the first ever um, pre-college, absolutely Ashima, college skill building. So, the first ever pre-college fair I have ever heard of or been a part of in the country. And kudos to you, because that was phenomenal. What a pioneering effort. I was there in person. I was there for 4 hours talking to families. What an insightful time I had there. And I think the kind of mix that you had, it was not just universities, but it was companies, and it was also other schools from other parts of the world that offered experiences in terms of exchanges and you know, those experiences. I think that was phenomenal. So Namita, you clearly work with so many students and who have very high aspirations and also probably deep pockets. Let's talk a little bit about that segment, and let's say they have all the access in the world, right? What's going on in their minds? What is the Red Pen sort of focused on, and what triggered you to conceive and execute something like this? And what was your learning from this?
Thank you so much for that question, Bhakti. I thank you for coming, first of all, to our summer programs fair. And I think it was born out of requests from families and parents. I mean, the Red Pen works with families in the college admissions process. And in fact, I'll tell you guys a story. We never worked with younger kids. For me, it was, we had an undergraduate team and we had an MBA team. And, students would come to us early, and literally I would do something called a profile development meeting, which was a 2-hour meeting. I would sit with the family and I'd be like, okay, guys, you're in grade 8, you're in grade 9. Here's what you need to know. Here's a snapshot of global admissions, Indian admissions. Here's a timeline. And I'd say to them, go away, and I'll see you in the 11th grade when you want to apply to college. And they'd come back. They'd be like, ma'am, now my child is in a CBSE curriculum. What is IB? Should I do that or should I not? Ma'am, the question's about subject selection. Can you please help me? Ma'am, my neighbor's child is going somewhere for summer program. Even should I send my child? So it kind of started. And parents came back to us and said, listen, and in fact, it was to one of my colleagues that we need a hand holding. We need you to kind of be available to answer our questions. We don't know things. And this was around the time when IB schools were mushrooming across India, right? I mean, now we understand, it's established, well, not always, but the idea is that there is a little bit more information and people can make informed decisions. So that's what inspired us to start a mentorship program. Families came, that is in fact our fastest growing service line now. But I still put my foot down. I said, I'm not talking to anyone who's younger than 7th grade. They're just too young, though, they request us and I say no. But the idea of our mentorship program is to help students make academic decisions that are not gonna close any doors for them. Like, I'll give you an example. There are kids that kind of came to us, in the 11th grade and would say something like, I really want to study economics at LSE and I've taken commerce, but they don't have maths. And I'm like, you're not even eligible to apply if you don't have math. You're eligible to apply to LSE if you've never studied economics, but if you don't have math at the highest level in your curriculum, you're not eligible to apply. Students would come and say, I want to study medicine. Yeah, I've done bio and I've done physics, but I don't have chemistry. Well, you can apply then. So it's these kind of questions. And in fact, the Red Pen's vision is transforming access to information. Where we want to make sure that families and students have enough information before they're making any educational decision at all rungs of the ladder. Okay, now when we kind of we're talking about profile building, again, again, for me, it's an organic discovery process. It really is about trying out different things, and the success stories actually happen when someone, like, we had a student who just said, okay, I really want to study aeronautical engineering. They kind of did an experience, through their parents. It was organized through their parents. They went and they spent some time in a company, and they actually discovered that it's actually the software part that they like and not the engineering. So for me, that's a win, right? I'm like, you've figured it out. And sometimes coming out of something and being like, oh, actually, this is not what I want to do, is also a win. You end up, otherwise you kind of go through this process of choosing those subjects, applying to college, and then you're stuck. Because in the UK and India, you can't really change your major. So we were students were on this program, they were looking for opportunities in the summer. And, Madhu said very clearly, and I agree with this, that there is a certain, 10% of students who are highly motivated individuals who will go find these passion projects, who will go to internshala, and like the examples that Sarvesh showed about, run after programs, try and get opportunities, hustle, right? But there's also a bunch of students, in fact, the majority of them, that want to try something but need a little bit more structure. And that is when, you have programs like Clever Harvey and several others. So we did a lot of research and we kind of created this list of offerings. And we realized that, we have this amazing database of offerings for students. So whether a child is interested in dance or music or hiking or AI or coding, why not share that with everyone? So our whole, like I said, transforming access to information. The Red Pen information sessions, events are and always will be free to everyone. If they decide to engage us, that's a bonus and great. But if they don't, that's also okay. If you've come, you've kind of learned something and you walk away, that's a win for us as well. So that's what inspired us to kind of, create the summer programs fair. We're hoping to kind of go to more cities next year. Had some fantastic feedback. But when it comes to profile building, there are many students who we are, a race of formulae. We like to kind of think of things as, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll get this outcome, right? And we really try at the Red Pen not to use that when it comes to profile building or in our mentorship program. It's usually a process of discovery, which then, like how Madhu said, you can use that in your application. But unfortunately, that it's not so straightforward, right? Parents come with kind of ideas that, XYZ students that I know did these things and they got into Harvard or they got into Yale. So maybe my child needs to go in that path, and they kind of rely on us to help them through that discovery process.
Yeah, I had a grade 6 student and his parents coming to me at the fair, and I was like, I don't even want to
Too
talk
young.
to you. I was like, you need to go and play. Like, you don't need to do summer programs. You're grade 6. What is wrong with you? And I said that to the parents, not the child, of course. But yeah, I mean, phenomenal. I think that was one of the most path-breaking things I have attended and been a part of in the recent few years. So thank you for that, Namita and the Red Pen. And I want to throw
I
this
just-
open. But yeah, go ahead, Sarvesh. And
I'm
Bulbul,
just- I'm-
feel free to
I'm-
jump in because I see you making notes as well. So feel free to jump in with your observations. Like I said, it's not a standard conversation. Just go ahead, unmute yourselves, and just go ahead. Yeah.
So when I say Bhakti saying no to a 6th grader or Namita saying no to a 7th grader, I think you must all be loving Whitehead Junior then, right? This must be the most loved company in this community. But I think I just want to add there, because I recently became parent to twins and my perspective changed. I think a lot of peer pressure on parents to the profile building and all of that. I mean, I'm wondering, like should I talk to my kids in Hindi or English? Right? And my wife says no, it has to be English because everybody else is doing that. I mean, that basically a decision. Like, and I can see how it will play out for the rest of the life. At some point, the profile building will come. At some point, the resume building will come. At some point, the IIT will come. All of that will come along. I think, as a society, I think we have to sort of ask ourselves that, say, some of the happy countries like Denmark, etc., where there's a different approach to education, or Japan, right? But why is there so much pressure on parents to compete? Is it because we all gone through that experience of competing through our lives and we sort of wired that way and we expect our kids to do the same? And but I think as long as the pressure on the parents doesn't diminish, the term profile building and resume building, all of that will remain, because eventually that's what you get judged on in different places in your life.
Sarvesh, I'm just going to respond to that, just because, I completely agree with you. And in fact, when like sometimes my team will say, but we should take this child, the 7th or grade. I'm like, don't, like, just let's not kind of make these, programs where we're saying you must do an internship, you must do a community service, you must do this, you must do that. I'm like, no, it has to be an organic process. And in fact, the students, I have case studies, and I tell parents whenever we do our information sessions, that there are, it's the organic ones, because at the end of the day, okay, one of the things that is fueling this, and I'm going to say this, is university admissions, guys, okay? If you're going to have a form on a university admission application that says list your activities, okay? If you're going to ask kids to do that, they're going to go do the activities because they want to get into college, right? So until that goes away, this is going to stay. Now, we can just ignore it or we can embrace it. And if we embrace it, do it in the right way, right? Like I tell kids, there are 10 spots on the Common App form, but you don't need to fill them, right? There's absolutely no need to write 10 activities. In fact, if you write 10 activities, make sure you've counted that there's only 24 hours in a day. There are some kids who write stuff, and I'm like, you're saying to me that you're doing something for 36 hours in one day. That makes no sense, guys, right? So, and it's about depth over breadth, when it comes to high school profile building. And that's what I keep telling students as well, that until you're 8th or 9th, dabble, try different things, but eventually if you want to do something that's going to help you stand out in this process. And the kind of families that Red Pen works with want that. They want to kind of stand out in this process. They want that spike in their application to make, like that Cornell kid that survey showed us about. And that's kind of where we kind of come into the picture, but we want to do it in an organic way. And until university admissions changes this, it's not going to change. And in fact, it's going to become even worse, and there's going to be even more competition, and there's going to be even more of a rat race happening. So
thank you for calling that out, because honestly, universities do not put profiles at the forefront of the ultimate decision making of admitting students, and that I'm speaking for a majority of the universities. So that is a lie. That is a FOMO that is created. And Bulbul, I'd love to hear from you about it, because I know that Atlas was, erstwhile ISD, ISME, still ISD, ISME, under the umbrella of Atlas. You personally have been doing workshops across the country. I know you've been visiting, I don't know how many schools you visited, and done design thinking and so many other workshops. And you did that way before anyone even thought about like thought leadership and master classes. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what inspired you, and any other comments that you've written down very vigorously on your notepad.
No, I was actually reflecting, and I'm going to
Hello?
Bulbul, we can't hear you, Baba.
am I audible now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
No, I was listening to Namita, and I'll reflect upon what you've just asked, Bhakti. And I said, she quoted, and I quote, right? And that's what I was writing down. And the parents come and they say, we want to make sure our child gets to Yale and Harvard or wherever, and therefore we want him to discover himself. And I'm just thinking, if you're going to discover yourself, you don't know where your discovery is taking you, right? So if you already have a Harvard and this and this and this and this, you don't need a discovery process. You need a map, right? You need a map that takes you to a coaching institution and that does a few things. It'll definitely get you there. The beautiful thing about a discovery is that you don't know where it's going to get you. Right, but are we as parents willing to let loose? Are we many of us are parents here, and have we indeed walked the talk? And I think many of us may have, but I was just smiling at that, Namita, because a discovery and the end are often, they don't add up for me. So, but anyway, Bhakti, to respond to your question, I can't see Bhakti, so I'm assuming she's there.
Right here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so Bhakti, like I said, when we at ISD and ISME, and now we have 3 schools actually, which is also a school of technology, when we started out doing work that we do with students, we were very clear that we don't want to talk about our university. We are a passionate set of people who genuinely believe what we do. Look at our design school for a moment, Bhakti. Think of this one child in a class, let's say let me not name any school, but any one school in class 12th, in the midst of 300 other students, who is a creative type, right? He anyway feels like an outsider in the place. He's not an engineer, he's not a doctor, he's not writing the CLAT examination. He is an outlier. He's gone past a situation where his parents may have tried to convince him that he should look at the beaten path. And having gone through all of that, he's wondering whether design is for me, or design is not for me. And here comes a set of people who say, hey, listen, by the way, all of us are designers. We practice design, we teach design, we have students who work in this industry. And by the way, let's interact. And in this process, you may find your strengths. And we give him the confidence to pursue what he wishes to. And I think that was really the objective of outreach, Bhakti. We wanted to work with young people and give them creative confidence that we thought if we won't, who would, right? And really, that was the genesis, and it helped to have, for many of us who do a lot of outreach here, Bhakti, I think it's really helped that we've all been teachers ourselves. And we walked that path at one point where I think we all had the same set of questions. Is this going to get me a career? Is this going to give me a viable career? Am I going to make enough money? Will I be able to get myself a car, etc., etc.? And they look at you and they say, yes, I think this is what I'd like to do. We have so many situations, Bhakti, we've had students come to us and say, I want to be like all of you, right? I want to, sometimes even say, we want to talk like you. Right? And I think that's the biggest sense of, I mean, that's for me outreach, because we wanted to ensure we connect with them at the level of the soul. We touch, move, motivate them in a certain way that we thought only we could. Not saying that the schools can't, but then they have limited resources to be able to do all of that. And soon enough, organically, what was meant to have been a flicker became fire. And today we do a whole lot of workshops in design thinking, in creativity, in helping students build portfolios. And interestingly, Bhakti, these things happen, innovation, I truly believe when you're truly immersed in something, you can innovate,
Yeah.
right? So a student walked up and said, great, all of you come and tell us in your portfolio, put creative stuff. You have creative writing you can put over there, but that's not very useful. Be specific. Tell us really what you want in a portfolio. And that was a very useful input from a student in Bangalore. And we put together a module called Portfolio Making that we'd never have thought of had the student not come and told us, hey, listen, all of what you tell us is not very useful. Be more specific. Someone said, you talk about careers in design, but we really want to be able to go home and talk to our parents and say, tuck, 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 these are the careers in design. And we built together a module called Careers in Design. And I think that's where working with students, getting their feedback, improvising what is it that and how we want to talk to them about what we have to offer. And I think schools have been really kind, Bhakti. Initially when we went to school, they say, hey, listen, 30 minutes, the bell rings, you have an extra period, tell them everything you want to tell them about design, about life, about careers, about and we said, listen, 30 minutes is not enough. We've reached a stage when schools call us for days at end. We've had schools call us for 2 days at a stretch and say, just camp over here, do the sessions for our children, but by the way, do sessions for our parents as well. And I think I must compliment that schools have been very generous with their time in ensuring that they get the right set of people to come and motivate their students. And by the way, Bhakti, they will find out about Atlas when they must, because they've interacted with people they'd like to be like, or they'd like them to teach them at some point. And I think that's what we've really tried to build by way of outreach. Hardly ever would you have us talk about the university, about our website. Those things you can find out on the website, right? Course fee, how to apply, all of that. Those are routine stuff. But yes, and I'm happy to say that we're probably the country's largest university for courses in design. And that is for all of us here, is a huge sense of achievement, because we've put design on the map in India like anywhere else in the world, right? I think, and it has been an organic journey, and I can keep talking about it, Bhakti. I'm sure this airtime belongs to everyone else, but
No,
yeah,
but Bulbul, I will say this with all confidence that you put design on the map, and you also, I think, um, convey to students, parents, and faculty and counselors that design is not about fine arts. I think it's so much, it's design is all pervasive like technology. I think there are two things that are all pervasive, design and technology. Whether we understand it or not, we are all designers, and we are all, we have to be technologically savvy. We don't have an option in this world. But design is something that is so much more inherent than even technology, at least for the millennial generation. So I absolutely agree with that. And I also want to sort of, you know, latch on that keyword and emphasize what you just said. I don't think you even realize that stroke of brilliance when you said that keyword of creative confidence. I think that's a word, that's a lot of depth in that word, that term, creative confidence. Because creative confidence is, I've heard of critical thinking, I've heard of a lot of different skills being talked about, but creative confidence is, I think, new in terms of just the term, right? Maybe not the concept, but the term. And I think you've just given a term to something that we've all experienced or not experienced. And thank you for that. So, guys, latch onto that keyword, creative confidence. I get a lot of questions from counselors about we want to do more. In fact, just a couple of hours ago, I did a workshop for the IC3 7th cohort on profile building, funnily enough, on the same day. Okay, not intended, not intended. I have a whole deck for it on McKinsey and 56 skills and whatever, right? But the key question was about sustainability of skills. So the question that was thrown to me by a lot of these counselors and teachers was they can do workshops, they can attend classes, they can attend all of these things, but how do we ensure that these skills are sustainable? And I'm going to throw that question at all of you. And if you can maybe take a few seconds to think about this and tell me how can a schools collaborate with more individuals and more organizations without breaking the bank, and B, how can they ensure that this experience is sustainable and the skills are long term? I have a view on it, but I'd love to hear from all of you. So yeah, go ahead, Pratik.
Okay, so Bhakti, very interesting. Like the way you put it, it's brilliant. But if you go back to the ground reality again, I'll just be like very real of what the situation looks like. Very important stat, well published, accepted in India by all boards. 93% students in our country are still aware of less than 7 careers. Okay, it's a harsh reality, right? We know we are a digital era. We have Siri, we have Amazon's, Alexa, everything, but that is the reality on ground. Now when you look at profile building, and it's interesting the way Bulbul started by talking about discovery versus planning, because that's actually the reality, right? If you look at 11th and 12th kids, generally, particularly students who's planning for his overseas education or applying to a liberal ed university, all the activities that they're doing, you can club them under profile building, but it's actually more on the lines of personal branding to build your resume or a portfolio to go abroad or to go to a college. And that is how I would look at it. Whatever activities I did to get into an INSEAD or an ISB, there were seven, eight things which were a must. I needed to have that. I did that. That is personal branding. That is not profile building for me. Profile building would be stuff which I'm 8th, 9th, 10th doing to just explore opportunities. For example, I saw a movie on, let's say, space, and I like it, and I am doing some activity to getting into it. Again, I don't want to, and I was saying that in my previous answer as well, that defining that into sections is a problem, right? And it's unfortunately done, because once you are putting it down into a piece of paper or in a college application, you have to club it enter into some category, right? It doesn't matter if, as long as I can get meaningful output of what, if I am doing this, what it will imply, how it would be. It could be just attending a TED talk. It could just be getting, it's like if I, as a kid, I get an answer that investment banking is not a viable career at grade 11th. It is not something you can do. It is something which is a long term plan. It is something which will happen later. It is not, you cannot become an investment banker because you saw Hrithik Roshan in some movie. I don't know the movie. You can't suddenly become that, right? There's a journey to it. So that is
Zindagi
what you
na
need to
milegi
solve.
dobara.
Zindagi na
I
milegi.
Zindagi na
remember the
milegi dobara.
movie.
Yeah. So I think drawing
The
that
Wolf of Wall
parallel
Street.
between profile building and personal branding, when you have a goal, you have a very clear vision of what you're doing, then there are steps you are doing. Then, as rightly said by Bulbul, you're not discovering, right? But when you are at a younger age and you're doing all these activities, like, and also the reason it has to be a little more spread out in terms of activities. If you go to schools today, the most common profile building activity everybody's running after, every kid wants to do, is MUNs, for example. It may or may not be relevant for that kid, right? If I am looking at a particular career, I might be a kid who is not great at public speaking. I don't like it, but I'm unnecessarily into that MUN speaking batch for no rhyme or reason. It doesn't excite me. It has of no interest. I would rather be happy behind a computer playing an hackathon or doing something that is equally a popular thing, but it's just that it is not structured in our country. MUNs is very well persuasive. It is just so many of them. The opportunities are listed. So that is how I look at it. And even with internships or career simulations, everything, it's the idea is to just get them exposure. If we can achieve that through whatever term means, it works. And
Thanks,
also
Pratik.
onto the skill bit which you mentioned, right, Bhakti? if for to reach there, we first need to know what is required, right? So I can talk about those skills, like particularly if you look, you mentioned the McKinsey report in your email as well. If you look at that report, the stuff that they're talking about, future skill, everybody's know, right? Everybody knows that grades is not going to be the most important thing going forward in life. Everybody knows the education system is going to go through a massive change. Everybody knows with chat GPT, all these things is going to disrupt. So only thing which is logical to do as a parent, and coming into Sarvesh's shoes as well, what he mentioned, like if I have to think what the kid should be doing in the future is just building skills. That's all. And doesn't matter. And whether it comes into profile building or not, doesn't matter. They just need to build skills, get more and more information, be more empowered, be more ready to take on the world in terms of the challenges, ambidextrous, culturally aware. Those are the kind of things which I think everybody around us should work on. If we do that, I think it will happen automatically.
Yeah, if you just can add on to what Prateek said, I think the question, going back to the question on skill sustainability, I think that's not really the ask, right? In such a changing world, how can something, when we expect even working professionals to be constantly reskilling themselves, upskilling themselves, there's nothing that's going to be stay forever. Fundamental skills like creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, or cultural awareness, these are the 4-5 bits that are the foundational pillars of somebody's core skill set, I would say. Right.
No,
So I
but
think
Sarvesh, there's a fundamental disconnect here. That is that I think for woke professionals, and I consider a lot of all of us here as woke professionals who had our time in the sun, we've lived, we've experienced, learned all of that, right? We know that nothing lasts forever, and we've learned it the hard way, software, whatever. But the point is that most school students at this point, what we consider as a given of communication or collaboration, these are not skills that are
yeah, correct.
or
Yeah.
easily imbibed, and
Yeah.
therefore they're saying something as simple as the counselor said, something as simple as how do we, when they're doing a project, they are collaborating, they are communicating, right? There's interpersonal skills involved, but they are not realizing it. And my reflection on that was that one of the biggest challenges for a lot of us is we go through experiences, but we don't give ourselves time to reflect after we've gone through the experiences. So if you
Yeah.
go through an experience, and I'd encourage all of you, and I think we only talk about reflection in the form of testimonials if you're a business. But if we don't think in a business perspective and we say, if a student has gone through an experience, whatever it may be, whether it's a project in classroom or it's an extracurricular activity or it's a summer program, do we encourage them to reflect in their own creative expression, where whether it's recording a selfie video, whether it's writing a blog, or just putting up a story about it on Instagram, or just talking to someone about it and saying, hey, this is what I think I took away from it. There's a fundamental lack of self-reflection after every experience, including for all of us as adults. And I think that's one of my suggestions to those counselors, that just get them to reflect, and they will realize that they're learning those skills day after day, and they're it'll, what is top of mind is something that you realize that this is what you're learning. Otherwise it's hard to name skills, right? Madhu, go ahead, and then anyone else who would like to go in, and then I have another question. Yeah.
I was just going to respond to your question on what can schools do that doesn't break the bank. So if I may share my screen, this is something that we've just launched, very, very hot off the press. It's the Clever India initiative, where we're working with schools to run complimentary workshops. These are completely complimentary, doesn't we don't charge the school anything at all. And it's in association with all of the brand partners that we work with, which begins with giving students a sorting hat quiz. So getting an understanding of, what do I enjoy? What kind of person am I? What's my personality? What are my likes and dislikes? And then getting foundational workshops in what we see is absolutely the bedrock of no matter what you do in the future. So being able to think like an entrepreneur, understanding people, understanding marketing, understanding finance, understanding technology, and then finishing off with a career day where they're able to showcase their ideas and what they've learned. So if there's any schools which are looking for ways to bring experiences to their students, and well, budget doesn't matter, frankly, because these are being run complimentary across the country anyway. Just feel free to get in touch with us, and we'd be more than happy to set these up for your school.
I'm
We
going to
are
ask
going
all of
to
you
take this
to
out. Sorry.
Sure. I'm going to ask all of you to drop in your email IDs in the chat whenever you have the time, so people can get in touch with you. Bulbul, we can go ahead with you, and then we can go on to Sarvesh. Yeah.
Am I audible, Bhakti?
Namita, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, you know, your point on, and I think both of you have a point, Sarvesh, when he says skills are forever dynamic and they change. But all of us have innate core skills that we are meant to. At the end of the day, you have specific skills, which is what, you know, and I have, you know, each of us has. And I think that discovery of skills is also part of, you know, and I really like the way Prateek said about personal branding versus, you know, profile building. So I think the idea here is to discover those innate skills we are meant for, right? And that is the purpose, right? And by the way, you can extrapolate it. I take a huge interest in philosophy. So I will say skill is nothing but your karma, right? Right? It is through your karma that you will discover yourself, isn't it? I mean, we are meant, a majority of us are going to discover ourselves through. And of course, at some point, the karma becomes lesser for yourself and more for someone else. But karma and kriya is nothing but the skill. And what is that karma and that kriya that I was meant for? What was that special skill God gave to me that I can bring and express myself through my work for the others? Is, I think, that innate discovery of skill. And each of us must discover that journey and must discover that one skill. But we do need acquired skills, whether it is communication, team building, effective use of time. These are softer skills that I think we also learn sometimes. And Parvesh, I was thinking about, you know, getting the internship on a platter, but there was also some joy in having to wait all day to get a letter from the HR saying you did a good job in internship, and sometimes writing that letter yourself and printing it yourself and finally getting a signature from the boss. It taught you resilience and patience and God knows what else. But the other thing I want to say, Bhakti, and before Namita comes in, and I think any skill can only come with practice. The more I keep doing something, I'll get good. And, you know, so every sadhan needs sadhana, right? If I want to be perfect at something, I have to keep doing it to such an extent that it becomes second nature, right? I want to be a sports person. I must do it for those many years. I must fly an aircraft for those many years that till such time I can cruise. I must play a certain game till it becomes second nature. So no skill will become second nature until you've invested enough time doing it. And you know, that's why I thought, bin अगर आपको साधन चाहिए तो बिना साधना के नहीं आएगी. So you know, the skill will only come with enough putting in, investing time, effort, energy, and of course, you know, exposure. And you'll be from good to great to perfect.
प्रोफेसर बुलबुल चौधरी एट द स्किलटेक यूनिवर्सिटी, आपने इतने कोटेबल कोट्स दे दिए इस शाम में, मतलब पिछले 1-1.5 घंटे में, कि मतलब मैं अभी बस नोट्स बना रही हूँ. But that is beautiful. Again, creative confidence. Sadhan needs sadhana. Thank you for that.
And skill is nothing but karma and kriya.
Karma and kriya. Third quotable quote. Please, someone make notes. I'm trying to do that as well. But yes, Sarvesh, go ahead. And
Yeah,
then
sorry, I just
Namita, sorry, 1 second, Sarvesh. Namita had her hand up first, then we come to you.
I just want to apologize that I need to, something has urgent has come up and I need to run and drop in between. So
Go for it. Thank you for joining us.
Right.
All
So thanks
right.
so much. I really enjoy this conversation. I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye, Sarvesh. Bye. Go ahead, Namita.
No, I just want to address your point about reflection, you know, and that is one thing that I think students are forced to do if they're looking at international admissions and admissions to universities like liberal arts colleges in India, right? Because it's not just about what activities I've done, but it's about what have I learned from activities and what has that taught me about myself. And a lot of these university applications expect that kind of depth when you're kind of filling out the application. So that you know, it's like this example, you know, when parents come and say, oh, you know, I have a connection in Microsoft, my kid can go do, you know, an internship there. And I'm like, listen, it's not about the brand name of where they're going to do the internship. They can go to Microsoft and make coffee for someone, or they can sit in a garage in a startup and actually be given something to do, learn something about themselves. And that narrative, that story that they eventually speak about or share is the one that's going to stand out. I am talking about it from the college admissions perspective, but everything that we do, or every activity, profile building, skill building, personal branding, whatever we want to call it, has to have a step of reflection. In fact, that's something that we insist on, because what's the point otherwise, right? I mean, it can either consolidate and cement what you thought you wanted to do, or it cannot. So, but that's a very good point, Bhakti. I mean, just kind of, that's kind of what a counselor's role should also be, right? I mean, you really need to ask them those questions and then help them make that narrative based on what they tell you. And it's really easy, if a kid comes and they're like, I learned this happened, that happened, and they're bubbling inside, you're pretty confident that they're going to be fine. They're going to go to that university, they're going to apply, they're going to get in, and they're set. And it is that like confidence building experience as well. Like if you get me starting, like if you like say 15 years ago when I was applying to college and you asked me about biochemistry, I'd go on and on because that's what I studied at university. I was convicted that's what I wanted to do. But genuinely passionate, not just because it was. Now when I read about the vaccine and I read about, I still do that. I love it. Yeah. But how do you? That is okay. So the only point I'm trying to make is that as counselors, as educators, what my goal is like, how do we instill that intrinsic motivation in kids, in students? And if you've done that, then a lot of this stuff kind of happens naturally and for the right reasons.
Absolutely. And Ashima will come straight to you. But I think what you're talking about is the golden circle. And Simon Sinek said this beautifully. Go watch his TED Talk. It's one of the best TED Talks in the history of TED Talks. And he says, there's a golden circle. There's the why at the center of it all. And then there's the how, and then there's the what. Most of us are stuck on the how and the what, but we don't answer the question about why. So whether you are trying to sell a product, or you're trying to educate a student, or you're trying to counsel someone, you're trying to convince someone, you're trying to convince yourself, if you don't have the why at the core of that conversation, you've lost your audience, including yourself. And I think that's what, Namita, you've just said, that it's about telling them why. And then also that post reflection is very critical, because while the Red Pen might encourage, and there might be other more woke organizations that will encourage reflection, but I think schools fundamentally do not use that as a tool for self discovery. And it's so simple. Reflection, it's so simple, but I don't think we encourage that as a discovery tool. Ashima, come on camera so we can see you, and we'd love to hear your question. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. I have actually heard everyone. And, from a school counselor's perspective, I'd like to just add over here that one size does not fit all. External counselors sometimes get the cream. I'll be very honest, very, very honest, we do have to deal with kids who really don't want to do anything. And the only purpose of them not applying abroad or to a university which is liberal arts is because they don't want to build their profile. It's a daunting process. So profile building in the sense is something that we have to cut it down. We have to probably present it in a manner that you're building a skill in self-exploratory mode. It's more to do with understanding what you're good at. And I completely agree with Bulbul where she said that you first need to, everybody has their innate skills, it comes with personality. You're good at certain things. Some people are confident in talking, some are not, some are some are good at creative stuff. So at the school level, it is very important for us to understand what they're good at and then pushing them towards or encouraging them towards doing activities which could probably build their skills which are most required in the modern world, which is service oriented, intellectual, emotional intelligence. It's cognitive flexibility. It's important for them to understand that it's not just about doing an activity just for the sake of college applications. And that is exactly what we've been pushing: profile building college admissions, but it's not really that. If we really want to encourage our kids to probably do something, any activity for that matter, whether it's design thinking, whether it's an internship, which I probably, most of the time call it work shadowing, because, there might be 10% of the internships which really give you work experience, but the other ones are just, sitting and observing what the other person is doing. So if you really want to do that, we probably have to create more and more open lessons where kids are exposed to just understanding whether they like something or not. What's my most favorite subject and activity, and what's my least favorite subject and activity? And probably that is what should be the first step for them to understand that, yes, I can go ahead and do this. They'll build that confidence, because what we do is we push kids, like MUNs, we push kids to do certain things which are there, peer pressure, peer frenzy stuff. Why do that? Why not tell them that you are good at it? Do this. You're not, you're probably, this is not your strength. Try something else. Everybody is born with primary, secondary, and tertiary skills, and they're innate to them. So why not push them to doing their primary ones first, and then see whether they require the tertiary and the secondary ones or not. I'd like to add that, basically.
Thank you, Ashima. And I just want to say this for schools that are here. And look, you might have students going to a particular university or you might not. You might be, as an organization, engaged with companies, certain companies or not. But the point is, are you aware of who's providing what? And oftentimes I see that schools are very closed off to collaborations because of preconceived notions, whether it is with organizations or with universities. And I think I'd really encourage counselors here to break that barrier, because you don't have to pay money to a service provider. You don't have to send students, and no organization, no university is asking ke mujhe bacche bhejo. You know what I mean? Nobody in their right minds is saying that to you. If they're not in the right mind, they're probably saying that to you, but nobody in the right mind is saying that to you. We really want to create long-term relationships and build long-term partnerships. Give us a chance. And I'm not talking about just like us as in me, but I'm saying give the community a chance, explore opportunities, invite people, have a conversation with them, and discover that there are things that could be done by people who you might not even think could have done those things, right? Because the world is so much larger than we even realize. So I think my appeal to counselors is to not be the frogs in the well. I'm being politically incorrect here, but I genuinely believe that. I think there's a huge sort of siloization of associations that happens in the space. And I think we need to break that. And we need to say, okay, you know what, let's get out of our comfort zones. We've not spoken to this individual, this organization, this university. Let's explore what they have to offer and see what they can add in terms of value to your students. And that's my humble request to all the counselors here. And Ashima, I know how dedicated you've been to your previous organization and this one. And I think that you have probably attended every single TOC meeting and TOC masterclass and TOC workshop. And I have to take the time to appreciate that, because you are genuinely committed to learning. And I really appreciate it. And thank you for being there and being as honest and brutally honest sometimes as possible. So thank you for that. Thank you, Ashima. Just for everyone's benefit, Ashima is the guidance counselor at Canada International School, Bangalore. All right. So we have one more hand raised. That is Harish. Harish from the College Board. Harish, can we have you on screen? And then we will also end our conversation because we are about 8 minutes away from time. So Harish, go ahead if you're still with us. Hi.
Hi, Bhakti. Thanks for the opportunity to pose my question. And thank you to the esteemed panelists over here for your wise thoughts on this topic of profile building for K-12 students. I apologize if my question is departing slightly from the topic at hand. But first, just a comment. Wanted to quickly second what Namita mentioned on the point about if you have 10 slots on the Common App, that's going to force parents and students to want to fill each and every one of those slots. In fact, my CEO, David Coleman, did write an article in The Atlantic where he makes a call, in fact, a cry to universities to make a small nudge to the Common App form so that there are, you can only excel in just a few activities. We talk about devotion to specific activities, going deep into specific activities, then and only then can you learn these skills at depth. I think Martha Graham writes an essay about being an athlete of God, and you can only be a true athlete of God if you can give the dedicated time, passion, and discipline towards that activity. And hopefully you cannot be an athlete. And I don't think you can be an athlete of God in several activities. My question to the esteemed panel, not to any specific one of you, but perhaps to any one of you is, I heard less about the role of great teachers in guiding students, whether it's around profile building, but essentially we're talking about admissions towards colleges. Uh, during my upbringing, I was all set to pursue engineering. I went through a curriculum that was heavily filled with STEM courses, but I did stack it up with courses in economics and accounting. And in fact, it was the economics teacher. I was fascinated with the subject, and of all the teachers, it was the economics teacher who recommended that she would write a letter of recommendation for me, which I think did slight wonders in my application process to universities. But in your wise counsel to the students that you serve, how do you go about this advice to students to find this one teacher? And that itself can be a journey. You probably have to test out various disciplines, try out different teachers. And I guess maybe the opportunities to do that in K-12 might be restrictive. You may have more opportunities to do that at college. But how do you go about finding that one teacher that can truly inspire you? College Board does a lot of research, and we found that there are essentially three things that result in students finding a great job or great satisfaction in a job, however you want to define that. And finding that one great teacher we have found has a great role in this topic.
I'm just going to take the liberty to start off first because it's very personal to me. My principal, and I attended VK Patil Memorial School in Pune, and it was a state board school back then. It's a CBSE school now. I went to a state board school in Pune, and um, she changed my life. She realized that I failed in math. I was awesome with history and English and creative writing, but I completely failed at math in every test. I was always out of the class because I was punished because I talked too much and I just didn't have a filter. And now when I look back, I realize I probably had ADHD and it was undiagnosed. But anyway, I also realized that she knew that I was not a conventional student and I loved drama. I love dramatics. I didn't like drama. I like dramatics, big difference. I love dramatics. I was always in elocution, always wanted to be, sort of speaking on the stage, whatever. And she realized it and she encouraged me. She never made me feel bad about it. She never made me feel less for it. And she's the reason that I had courage to accept my skills and not be ashamed of them and not think that I was not fit to be successful because my skills were different from what was conventional success. So I'm deeply grateful to her. But I don't think it's a student finding the right teacher. I just think it's about teachers having a certain mindset about accepting diversity and being inclusive and letting students be who they are and flourishing. That's my 2 bits. Yeah, of course, Namita.
So I'm just gonna quickly say that I think teachers have a massive role to play in our lives. I was a late bloomer. I mean, with STEM subjects, I was struggling growing up. But when you have the right teachers and they have you have the right focus, you're able to then really flourish. And that is something that I feel is the same thing when we're doing skill building or discovering. Rather than siloing people and saying that okay, you shouldn't do MUN or you should do this. High school is a time of discovery. You should explore everything and then figure it out. And I hope that our education system with this new education NEP coming up allows that to happen, right? I mean, I was set to study law. I speak German, Chinese, and English, and that was what I was going to do. And then I just decided that I loved chemistry and bio, and this all happened in 11th and 12th. And that was, and I'm so glad I studied science. I still have this passion for it. But had someone just said to me early on that these are not subjects for you and maths is not good, or you're not doing well. I was in a very competitive school, but I do think that Harish, you brought up such a fantastic point. the value of a good teacher who encourages you and who kind of, you know, it helps you in this journey of discovery in high school is vital. And it can change your life, you know, and sometimes it's not that you're bad at math. It's just that there's a mental block. I mean, if you were taught it, you sat down, I mean, I'm an example of that. So I just do feel that I hope our education system evolves, you know, not to just streamline kids or you're having to stream early on, and because you might get it later, and not everyone you know, knows what they want to do in 8th grade. And that's another thing. Parents worry, my kid doesn't know what they want to do when they come to us as a counselor. I'm like, that is fine. They're in 8th grade. They're not supposed to know what they want to do, right, at this point in time. So yeah, I mean, educators have a huge role in shaping students and their futures, and you know, we totally cannot neglect that.
Yeah, happy to take any other comments. Go ahead, Bulbul. Did you have something to say about?
I just want to say, you know, I've said this for counseling, Bhakti, and I say this for teaching. And many of us, and by the way, teachers don't come with tags, right? You're a teacher. Everyone here is a teacher, right? I mean, and I think teaching and counseling are both not jobs, right? They're both an act of love. And it reflects, you know, and think about the best of our teachers. Yeah, they were the most loving, right? You just wanted to be around them, right? And I think, Harish, we can't ever undermine the role of teachers. And even now in our lives, we have teachers in different roles and avatars, right? And even your bosses, your people you work with, your colleagues, they come in, they're all teachers also. And hopefully we are teachers to some of them in a nice way. No, Bhakti, just thought. I was thinking about it. Back to you.
Oh my God. Okay. So I'm just kind of making sure that I make a note of all your quotable quotes that
that's not the objective. It's
no, but it's happening.
Learn from one another.
No, you said something. Teaching and what is an act of love?
Counseling. Ashima.
Counseling.
Yeah.
It's an act of love. Okay, on that note, I'm going to ask 2 last questions to all of you. And whether you're a panelist or not, feel free to chime in, right? Everyone's opinion counts. Question number 1. Do profiles really guarantee college admissions, or do they really carry as much weight in college admissions as parents and students are made to believe? Namita, I'd love to hear your view on this.
Thanks so much, Bhakti. You know, in highly selective college admissions, it does. International highly selective college admissions, it does. Okay, I'm not going to lie to anybody here, because if you look at so in my head, there are 3 things that matter in a college application. There's your data, your voice, and your talent. Now, the kids that are applying to the most highly selective universities all have the data. They all are straight A students. They're highly ranked. They're you know, they're right, taking the right subjects. They're challenging themselves academically, all that stuff. So that gets your file on the table. Okay, I mean, unless there's another spike to you, unless you're, you know, running for India, or you're swimming for India, or you've climbed, you know, Mount Kilimanjaro. No, not even that. Or you've got a patent on, I don't know, something which is very, very spiky. The data is kind of the baseline of your application. So kids that are looking at highly selective international universities, if we look at the US, that is the base. Then the fluff starts mattering, okay? Then your voice and, sorry, your talent. Your talent is, again, the extracurricular activities, this profile stuff that we spoke about, skill building, what you're doing, your narrative, and all of that, okay? Now, most kids that have both, they have the data and they have the voice. They have the talent. The ones that are actually making it are the ones that have the voice. They're able to really put the narrative into the story. They're storytellers. They're able to kind of condense this whole thing into that 10-page PDF that the admissions committee is going to look at. If we're talking about highly selective college admissions in the US. In the UK, they don't really care about profile building unless it's related to what you want to study, right? If you want to go to Oxford to study biochemistry, then they care about what you've done outside the classroom in bio, in chem, and any skills you've developed that is going to help you as a scientist or as an undergraduate student. They're not bothered about anything else because there's no space to kind of put it in there. Canada is kind of in the middle. The liberal arts colleges in India are adopting the American system, because there are opportunities for you to tell your story, then there are other obviously components of this application, the LORs and the group interview and all of that stuff. But I do think that it matters, because if we look at past profiles of students that are being admitted to these places, they are doing activities that that are skill building, profile building, and yeah.
Thank you for that, Namita. Thank you. Okay, I have a Bulbul. Would you like to add to that?
No, Namita is a champ at this and she knows about every single university. So I'll go with, I just hope more and more, and Bhakti, we try and do this in Atlas all the time. I think how authentic is living your life with authenticity, and how well you've lived that, and how well can you demonstrate that, whether it comes in your voice, in your SOP, in your purpose, in whatever. I think authenticity, you're 17 after all. We don't expect you to have been a Nobel Prize winner, but having lived your life with authenticity, and if you can bring that to the table during an interview or any of these selection processes, I think is that one key ingredient we would look for, or we look for at Atlas. And I hope more and more and I'm sure more and more universities do.
I think it's the same in the international applications. It's the voice, that authenticity that comes out when you're narrating your story. That's important. I mean, and students that are willing to be vulnerable are the ones that are also eventually, going to be more successful, because you cannot be perfect. And in that journey, there is something where you've stumbled and then you've learned. And that is the kind of piece that they're kind of looking for. And articulating that is really hard. I find it hard too, even now after all these years. But that is kind of the turning point.
Every time I have one of these conversations, I just realize how much all of this applies to all of us as well, as adults. Like every single time I'm thinking about what we're talking, and I'm like, we're talking about 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, but it's as relevant to us as 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. And I think it's very enlightening and humbling at the same time, that what we're trying to tell a 15-year-old is also what we're trying to learn to live ourselves. Embrace experiences, embrace opportunities, be open. The world is not, a silo. I think it's beautiful. Yes, Pratik, would love to hear from you. You had your hand up.
Yeah, so just to add on to this question that you mentioned, so completely agree with Namita on every word, every line she said around this context. But just to add a sphere to it, if let's say when we were looking at building certain things at Mindler, if my ambition is to impact 100 million kids in the next few years, this roadmap and this logical path would apply to about 500K students who have that kind of a trajectory. Okay, but there's a huge audience and elements, I think, which Ashima touched about. It's a different world out there for those kids, right? For them, an outcome based planning may or may not work, and in fact I don't think so it will work. Why? Because it's almost like going back to a very popular essay on the MBA world, which is failure essays, right? The moment you start talking about in your college applications a section on failure, 10 things I tried but I failed at, encourage those things, because they don't want to take that initiative for multiple reasons. B, they don't feel it is relevant. And but what will happen is in the next 5 years, this will change in a big way, particularly with few UGC reforms that have happened, NEP coming in, CUET coming in, which was a like landmark thing wherein you suddenly had this marks. I would call it a drama, whatever you might want to use it. That thing went away for a while, and it's gonna be here to stay, right? Now, the moment that North Star metric of marks for schools is out, like I cannot advertise that okay, 90% of my kids have got more than 95%, and that's not the North Star metric. You're gonna be talking about meaningful activity-based stuff. It could be your alumni, it could be activities, it could be anything. It could be just like my kids are trying these things. We have 10 things happening. The moment you do that, it is gonna happen. So I'm talking about that mass set of audience that we have for them. And again, going back to the scale element, The moment you are building and thinking of it, and it will go back to what Harish said, whether it is teachers or counselors, they are the people who will drive it. And our job is going to be more and more to empower them with tools, resources. It is impossible for one Mindler or 1,000 Mindlers or Red Pen to do this. It cannot happen, right? Till the time you don't that. And that's the logic, Bhakti. If ever we talk about counseling, is like what we're trying to do with this international certified ICCC program,
Yeah.
is to get those people on ground. Till the time that change doesn't happen, impossible. It won't happen.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like a lot of people say, "Oh, why do you need another TOC?" Right? I'm like, we need 15 TOCs because the point is that the scale that we operate at as a community, as higher ed, as the country, I think we don't have nearly enough avenues for sharing, for conversation, for professional development, and I think that is even more applicable to universities and for service providers. There's always a dearth of these opportunities because there are different sort of economic viabilities at play and socioeconomic viabilities at play. Prateek, absolutely, thank you so much for joining us, and it was lovely having you. I hope you dropped in your email ID. We're nearly coming to the end of this conversation. I just want to ask one last question. I wish, all the service providers have gone. Okay, so they've conveniently dropped off. But I had a question for all of them, which is, um, how do you create access to everything? You're back, Pradeep. Awesome.
I
Okay.
think I'll stay back for you if you specifically wanted. Right? Let's do this. Okay.
Thank you. So I'll ask you this question first, and then everyone else can go last. Prateek, there is a serious divide in the country, right, in terms of access. How? I mean, there's this urban India, and there's tier two, but tier one, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are students and there are schools that don't even know you exist, that don't even know that there's a need for something like what you offer. What are you doing, or what do you think you can do to kind of create more access for tier three, tier four students and families and schools?
So actually, Bhakti, your question is right, but I won't divide it today in tier two, tier three, because I think that demarcation is changing in a massive way. But still, yeah, I get the essence of the question that you're asking. So yes, one is affordability, a very, very simple thing. Second is perceived affordability, which is in a school or an institution to adopt something, they assume that this is not going to work because there's a trust issue between the two stakeholders, which is the school and the parents, right? To reach something to the student, those two stakeholders have to be on board, and very often there is a disconnect. Like the same thing, the school, and very often some of the top schools would say that our kids would want to go outside to overseas consultants or specialists or people who have been there, done that, and really, really massive, and pay 10 times the price versus taking the same thing from the in-house thing. It's a very, very common thing. So there is that disconnect. But I think as organizations, what our role would be to create more and more opportunities. I'll just give you one example. So on one hand, we created virtual career internships, which are like simulations wherein we have created a massive product, a lot of tech involved. We have priced it and we are working in a particular program. But on the other hand, to do our bit and give back, what we are also doing, we run one of the largest corporate internship programs called the Mindler internship program, which is very, very, very clearly defined for the class 12 kid moving to college. And that's our bit we are doing. We're creating like a life skill kind of we have created an app, a course completely free for them. And in 1 year, this year itself, we had 32,000 class 12 kids from across the length and breadth of the country joining. So that is how we are creating access. But again, that 32,000 is minuscule. I would say it is massive. And that is where Sarvesh and I actually got in touch. I had posted on LinkedIn. Sarvesh like, boss, what are you doing? Where are these 32,000 people coming? That's how both of us connected. And that's the thing. But when we were chatting, we realized about 32 to kuch bhi nahi hai. This is nothing in terms like the elements which I think Madhu talked about in the slide she was showing, financial literacy, elements like that. Who's teaching them? And these are programs which we are trying to do. So this is just one example. But yeah, I think we'll have to do more and more of these.
Absolutely. I'm just going to like end this conversation here because I realize we are 14 minutes, 12 minutes over time. And everyone's been awfully engaged. And I think Bulbul, Harish, Prateek, and Rajiv, everyone who has their cameras on, thank you for doing that. And everyone else who's attended start to finish, thank you for doing that. Um, I hope that we've been able to sort of, it's never a fulfilling conversation. I think at the end of every panel discussion you feel like, oh my god, there was so much more to talk about, and we didn't discuss this and we didn't talk about that. But I really hope, thank you Vikram, so happy to see you here. I really hope that we're able to do more of these and have more conversations and delve more, because this is not a 1.5 hour job. But as long as we can have more of these interactions and see more of you participating, I think that's going to be beautiful. And thank you, Bulbul, for being here, the last man standing. All the other panelists have said they have to leave. So thank you for being here. And it was a pleasure having you. And thank you, Bulbul.
Okay, thanks, Bhakti. Bhakti, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant show. I must confess, you're so good at this. And keep the good work going. You're doing a brilliant job, and thank you from all of us.
Thank you, Bulbul.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the panelists. It was amazing, great, insightful, actually.
Raji, where are you from? Which organization?
I'm from Delhi. I'm from Univ Mentor.
Sorry?
Univ Mentor, UNIVMENTOR.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you for joining, Rajiv, and everyone who wanted to learn and share. And we'll see you all very, very soon. And we'll have another workshop coming up very, very soon. Thank you, Bulbul. Thank you for joining us. Bye.